Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. A great looking day in the markets, excellent way to end the week. We're going to be talking about that in addition to some interesting institutional and SEC filings overnight. A lot to talk about in relation to your favorite miners. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button guys, big help to myself and the channel. Anthony absolutely loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below how you're feeling going into miner earnings season and your top pick in the space. With that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, TGIF, another week of trading in the books. This was a volatile week to say the least. We had some big ups, some big downs, everything in the middle. We're going to be talking about that in today's podcast, recapping all the events we saw this week, but more importantly, some big SEC filings overnight and some big institutional investors in the top names in this sector. So a lot to discuss. First things first, the Bitcoin miners. I just mentioned we had some big red days. We're seeing some big green days to end out the week. This is a welcome bit of a rally here. A lot of times Friday, it's option expiration day. It's tough to see which direction the market's going to go. Pretty safe to say we're closing green here, well into the double digits for many of the miners we cover on a regular basis.
You're absolutely right, Bryce. End of the week, Bitcoin's not doing overly too much today, but the miners, again, we've talked about this decoupling, and it looks like we are seeing that more and more. I was speaking to some followers today, and they're also in that sort of same thought process about the HPC seems to be driving the prices now. And if you look at the list of those miners that are up today, I mean, Wi-Fi speaks for itself. Cipher, we've talked about a lot over the last few weeks with their contract there. Hive, growing their HPC and growing their Bitcoin hash rate in parallel. HUT and ABTC also seeing some clear improvements today, and Bitfarms there as well. And we'll come on to more about some of those companies in a while. IREN's also starting to recover. I mean, remember, IREN in the last few days, you could have picked up at $48. It's now $60.42. So, if people thought it was expensive at $48 to go back and buy in, $60.42 is no cheaper than that. So, but a really good day. And the volumes, again, really strong. I mean, Bitfarms, 79 million shares traded in that first few hours of trading there. Lots of others as well. Hive's up 22 million shares traded. Mara, 22 million shares traded. So lots of activity going on there. And if you look at the day range, most of these miners at the top are at their highs for the day there. There's a few miners. Soluna, again, we talk about Soluna. It has its green days and its red days. Today's another red day. But they've had so much improvement in the last few months in their share price. Maybe, again, a little bit of profit taking, but they certainly have things in order in terms of moving forward. They've got capital in play. They're about to go to the shareholders and ask for an increase in the authorized shares of the company, currently at 75 million. They want to grow that to 375 million. Now, that's not a dilution. That's just giving the company an opportunity to use or raise capital when they see fit to grow, or maybe an acquisition where you can buy another company, maybe with the use of shares. At the moment, they're pretty much used up of their authorized share capital. So to grow, you need different levers. They don't mine enough Bitcoin to raise capital like the likes of Mara, like the likes of IREN or CleanSpark. So they have to use other capital raise markets like the debt market. But using an ATM is a far more suitable way for some of these miners to grow. And we've seen that in the past. We saw Mara and Riot do that in 2021, 2022. We've seen the likes of IREN and CleanSpark in recent years. So Soluna, again, that'll go out to their shareholders. Hopefully they'll vote that through there. Gives the company more leverage there. Now, quickly moving on to the heat map. Again, it's a lot better day, and there's a lot more red coming off the 5-day change. Now, remember yesterday or the day before, both the day and the 5-day were totally red. We're seeing a bit of a pullback in the share price there. Cipher is 8% up on the 5-day range. That was red, 2 days ago there. Bit Digital having a great day. They're up 9% on the 5-day range, 7% up today. And Hive, 14% up today, 3% up on the day range, and Riot also 7% up on the 5-day range. So you can see that improvement there, looking really good. I mean, IREN again, leading the pack in terms of year-to-date and one-day change, over 500%. We've talked incessantly about those there, and Cipher 336% up year-to-date. So some really big positive numbers on there, and another stock to watch. Now, as we come closer and closer to that date where the shareholders will have had to have got their votes in, is Core Scientific, up 4% today. The share price $18.84. Now remember the deal with CoreWeave, which shareholders have until the 28th of the month to vote, so literally a few more days left. That deal was actually worth in the region of $20.40 per share for Core Scientific shareholders, valuing the deal at $9 billion. Now, we've seen a lot of social media posts saying that that's not enough now. With the times have changed now, that all these mining companies that are putting their power towards HPC are getting significant valuations, and Core Scientific has been sort of left behind in that group. It hasn't really risen anywhere near the likes of Cipher, Hut, and TeraWulf, in terms of the fact that some of these companies have got deals as well, but nowhere near the size of the deal that Core Scientific's done there. Interesting today, we had an analyst earlier in the week saying that they gave it a $31 increase in share price, and we've Cantor Fitzgerald coming out today saying they've increased their target on Core Scientific from $18, which is where it is today at the moment, to $26. Effectively a 44% rise in their target there. So they're of the firm belief that this deal's not going to go through. And as I said yesterday on yesterday's podcast, I was in Dubai at the conference, at the AIM Summit there, where I think there was 8 or 9 of the public miners represented at that conference. I managed to speak to quite a number of people there who've been serious shareholders in Core Scientific, and the feedback I was getting was the deal's probably not going to go ahead. Some of these big holders of Core Scientific shares, are voting no. And to be honest with you, if you look at the internal holdings of Core Scientific shares, there's nowhere near enough to sort of to balance that out there. So I think we're going to see a no vote next week. Time will tell. I might be proven wrong, but all these factors, with all these targets coming out significantly higher than $20.40, that tells me the markets are believing that the retail investors are going to vote this against. And that'll give maybe Core Scientific then chance to reflect and start to think, how they can do this better on their own. And they should be able to, looking at what's happening in the market, and as we discussed further today.
Yeah, well said. And a lot of catalysts for that HPC AI space, how quickly the times can change. We've talked about this Core Scientific deal over the last 2 years, and really how that's perceived in the market has varied so much over the past few quarters. Now, we mentioned the re-rate going on in front of our eyes in terms of HPC AI. A number of big catalysts broke overnight here as well. So excited to get into the next portion. The big one, Oracle securing $38 billion worth of debt to support 2 new data center buildouts tied to the OpenAI Stargate initiative. So we can get into the details, but roughly $23 billion allocated to the Texas site, another 15 in Wisconsin. To me, this really shows 2 things, Anthony. Number one, the demand is real for this infrastructure, this compute. And secondly, people with money and companies with money are willing to put it in the form of debt.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is, again, showing the demand for high performance compute. It is real. People are saying, is this going to be a fad? Is this going to be something that comes and goes? This is here to stay. This is, we had these discussions when the internet came out, 30 years ago, and people were questioning it then. It's here to stay. It's only going to get bigger. And this deal is just the start of things to come. And remember, how this deal feeds through. It'll feed through to a lot of other providers in the space as well.
Yeah, you're right about that. Now, Vantage Data Centers is the development partner for both sites, but again, you can see it trickle through the entire ecosystem. So, Oracle, Nebius, CoreWeave, Broadcom, even some of the miners we cover on the channel, and of course, AMD. We've been covering that story as they're starting to work with IREN as well. So, Stargate Initiative continuing to fire on all cylinders. And as we say many times, a rising tide really does lift all ships. Now, another super bullish catalyst overnight. Mike Alfred's good friend at Jane Street, they must have been on a couple of calls this week. They came out, they initiated some big positions in three of the top miners we cover: Cipher, Bitfarms, and Hut. Now, these were all disclosed last night through what's known as an SEC Schedule 13G filing. So we've got an example of what one of these looks like. Anthony, as a tenured accountant, can you walk us through what this form is and why it's used?
Yeah, this form is specifically used when investors who own more than 5% of a company's stock but do not have any influence or intent to control the company have to be recognized. And so therefore these 13Gs are filed, which gives everybody an awareness that there is another holder of stock there significantly more than 5%. And so as you've mentioned there, they went out and did some real shopping on the 16th of October.
Yeah, they certainly did. Now, Jane Street is well known as one of the largest, most advanced trading companies in the world, or in the financial world at least. This is obviously seen as very bullish from a lot of investors close to the space. We've talked about the institutional interest building in some of these names. We've talked about this shakeout we've seen over the last few days. It really does seem the institutions are now bought in to the Bitcoin miner conversion story.
Yeah, they are, and this is significant amounts. I mean, normally it's the likes of BlackRock who take this sort of a size in a company, but this is clear. That Jane Street have done their research and they see the potential in HPC. And remember, we're still quite early in this space. We haven't really got to the levels we expect. I mean, I remember my first interaction with AI, probably close to 2 years ago, and you could just see from then the changes that are happening in the space and the power that's going to be required to deliver those changes, and the shortage of power out there. And who's got the power at the moment? The mining companies have got the power at the moment. And so this is a real positive move here. Now, we know Cipher has a deal already, but Bitfarms and Hut have certainly got aspirations to take on some co-location partners in the very, very, very near future. And as you've already mentioned, on previous podcasts, there's a lot of these miners with some sites in some really, really good locations, and we'll cover Bitfarms in a bit more detail.
Yeah, we really will. And you start to think, okay, what do these three miners have in common? We're going to revisit that in a second. So we've got that tremendous Oracle announcement, $38 billion of investment. We've got Jane Street, a very well-known institution, taking a major stake in a number of these companies. Then we have our good friend Matt Siegel breaking the news. The DOE, or Department of Energy, a new FERC directive specifically targeting the PJM market. So I believe we cover a miner in that market, Anthony, talking about expediting grid hookups, fast tracking or shaving down up to 1 to 2 years off the typical PJM timeline, which is around 3 to 5 years to get into an interconnect agreement. So this has really been the bottleneck for the industry. There's two sides of this coin. One could say, hey, this potentially could open up new competition for people like the miners. On the other side of the coin, we need to remember there's players like Bitfarms already in Pennsylvania PJM market, multiple sites, and those are scheduled to come on over the next few years. So this could be a real catalyst. I know a lot of people in social media land have been questioning Bitfarms run compared to maybe Cipher, IREN. Is this justified? This to me looks like some solid evidence that there's something tangible there.
Yeah, and you're going to have that argument. Miners who've got contracts are being valued at this rate here, and then we're seeing some miners who are getting valuations with no contracts. But believe you me, when you listen to Ben talk about the future of Bitfarms and these locations. And we were very fortunate. We were sat in the front row when he did his presentation at the H.C. Wainwright conference in New York. And that was, if you didn't get a chance to hear that presentation, that was an awesome presentation. So much so that some of the institutional investors were heard talking to Ben afterwards, saying that they're taking a stake in the company. Now, they have the potential there. They have the sites in the location. Remember, the sites they have are surrounded by hyperscaler sites. And we'll come on to a little bit more detail in a second, as we look through each of these miners and show you what they have potential of there. Yes, Bitfarms has grown significantly over the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks. In fact, literally a couple of months ago, the share price was a fifth of where it is today. And so you can see that massive growth. But one thing I will say, all the way through this year, one person's been buying stock as well as many retail investors, and that's the CEO. And he's been buying stock at regular intervals, all the way up to over $3 a share. And so, he can see the bigger picture. He can see the bigger picture where the company's going. This isn't insider trading. He's just believing the stock's undervalued. He's buying more of the stock. He knows that in the future they're going to have some sort of a deal. He's involved in speaking to all the hyperscalers. He's very positive about this, and rightly so. And it doesn't take a significant amount of understanding to work out that that location in Pennsylvania has got real potential. We were talking to people in March down in Fort Lauderdale at the Mining Disrupt conference, and we started to put together pieces of a jigsaw puzzle then about them sites, about the fact the Macquarie was lending money. And bear in mind, they're no mugs in this game. They will do their due diligence before they give any mining company the ability to use $300 million of their funding towards investing in sites there. Since then, that funding's been changed into project funding, and Bitfarms have managed to go out there and raise, I think it's another close to $600 million in terms of a convertible note, which gives them sufficient funding now, the best part of $1 billion, to deliver that first part of Panther Creek, to get it off the ground and ready for a HPC co-location partner.
Exciting stuff indeed. And they talk about scrubgrass as well. We have focused tremendously on Panther Creek, the great renderings, but scrubgrass, Ben just mentioned on this most recent spaces that they have the potential to get that up to a 1 gigawatt facility. So that would be essentially a unicorn, as Kamasutra puts it, in the PJM market. So park that idea for a second. We have one more minor update or SEC filing we wanted to talk about, and then we're going to break down these 3 minor commonalities in a bit more detail. Another one for the viewers, an 8K, this time filed by TeraWulf. What does it mean, and what was the content here?
Yeah, so the 8K are filed as soon as something is, reports that is a significant event in the company, which could be material to shareholders. So in light of that, TeraWulf have issued an 8K yesterday. And really, this is to explain now that they've completed their senior secured notes offering and raised $3.2 billion. That's $3.2 billion. That's the largest offering we've seen in the public mining sector in North America since I've been covering the miners, which is 6 years. And we've seen quite a few that have reached $1 billion, slightly over $1 billion, but this is $3.2 billion. And we were fortunate to sit down with Patrick Fleury, the CFO, just over a month ago in New York. And he was telling us about the money they'd raised already. So they'd already had raised over $1 billion already. And they needed about $3 to $3.5 billion to sort of finish what the funding they required to deliver all that infrastructure for the likes of FluidStack and for Core 42, the 2 big contracts that they have there. Now, this just emphasizes that they've gone out and delivered what they needed. And they haven't gone out there and just sold more shares in the company. They've looked at, how they can raise capital. Now, this $3.25 billion doesn't come free of all. The offering is at a 7.75% senior secured notes, which are due in 2030. So effectively, by securing this $3.2 billion, they now have enough funding to deliver exactly what they have there in their current strategy.
Yeah, very well said. And again, one of the similarities we're starting to see between the Cipher, the Bitfarms that are raising money, and of course TeraWulf, who just again, as you say, set the record in the industry. So more on that in a second. You talk about updates though. Another one we got this week to do with IREN coming out with their Q1 earnings. Now, this has caused a lot of buzz in the industry as well. You've mentioned previously the timeline in terms of turning earnings around. A lot of people on social media noticing that this earnings compared to last year has been pulled forward by a few weeks. So potentially, as we talked about earlier in the week, some sort of a big announcement in combination with this round of earnings.
It may well be. However, there's also another reason why it's been brought forward. And if you think about what's happening in the week after the earnings have been released, there's a big conference in Miami. It's the Cantor Fitzgerald conference, which most of the miners will be there over that period. And I believe IREN are going to be there as well. So that is probably another reason why they wouldn't do an earnings call during one of these events, because these events are not just them to give an opportunity to present their company. It gives an opportunity to speak to investors of their company or potential investors. And at these conferences, it's not necessarily the retail investors. This is the big investors, the big institutional investors. So I'm assuming when they go to these conferences, like we were fortunate to go to the H.C. Wainwright conference in New York, many of these companies will be sitting down for 3 days, having 30, 40 discussions with family offices, institutions, larger shareholders. And another reason for bringing it forward, and Todd Fernandez, a follower of the company, has basically put out a tweet saying maybe they're required to file their 10Q by the 10th of the 10th, and therefore need to move forward with the earnings release. But as I say, we'll find out more probably on the day of the earnings. But at the moment, 6th of October is the date, and I say we're all looking forward to hearing whatever Dan has to say, because generally there's a lot to hear, and it's all pretty much good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of different theories circulating around the internet on that one. It'll be interesting. Again, time will tell. We're looking very forward to that first week of October. And we're also going to be down in the neighborhood for a road trip doing our Texas tour in that same first 2 weeks. So a lot of activity, a lot of content, a lot of earnings interviews coming your way. Now, to close off the conversation, I asked the question earlier, what do these three companies, Jane Street, declared interest in, Bitfarms, Cipher, and Hut 8 all have in common? So we wanted to take a quick look at a few of the highlight slides from each one of these companies and talk to you a little bit about our bullish thesis. Now, Hut 8, they just put out a new deck courtesy of ABTC this week. You can see they're essentially the backbone or infrastructure component of this company now. This is another commonality we've seen between all three of these. They have the skill set, the people, the bench strength, and the know-how to build very high quality data centers at a very cost-effective price point.
Yes, they have, and they've just literally completed the Vega site there, which is an enormous facility spanning 162,000 square feet. We've seen a facility just as big at Corsicana there, so we can understand the level of this. I mean, I wouldn't have liked to have walked the length of some of these facilities. We were fortunate to get moved around in golf carts effectively, which helped the day because it's a big site. And these pictures just don't do it justice in terms of that there. But one thing they've done there is they've built a really great mining site there, and in the way when we've spoke about IREN and what they've delivered in their Bitcoin mining, they tend to build a better quality finish. And Vega, certainly compared to previous Hut 8 facilities, it certainly looks top notch there. And so the expectation is they could probably, deliver something special for high performance compute. And we'll wait to hear more on that issue as news comes forward.
Yeah, we certainly will. Now, another commonality between the two, at least, is their proximity in Texas. So we talk about Vega. Hut 8 has also announced up to 1.5 gigawatts of 4 new sites, all spread around southern United States. Again, expanding that infrastructure portfolio. Cipher, same thing here. They've signed that deal for Barber Lake, but you can see from their updated slide here, that's really just the first of these buckets. They've got a tremendous amount of power. Again, Tyler Page a cryptic tweet back on the 18th of October, his last tweet since that date, talking about his trip to Ann Arbor, scoping out this Black Pearl restaurant, stating there's no such thing as coincidence. So we've expected another deal. You've talked about the fact that Tyler said he would actually convert all of Black Pearl to HPC colocation if needed. This is another commonality, this proximity, these big sites in Texas.
Yeah, and they've got two sites which are already energized, so that puts them ahead of the game against certain other miners out there that are still waiting to get energization on some of their big sites. But Black Pearl is already energized, half it's delivering Bitcoin mining. Barber Lake, which is going to be the focus of the fluid stack deal there. That's taken up most of the 300 megawatts. When you add in the ancillary power there, there's still 60 megawatts available, so they could still have an increase in that contract there. Now, Barber Lake's also going to be increased from 300 to 500 megawatts, so that will give them potential to grow and expand even further, or bring another client onto the site. But you're quite right. I raised the question to Tyler at the New York conference and said, Tyler, you've got this 150 megawatts of mining at Black Pearl site there. If the right deal came forward, are you now saying that you've actually got potential for 600 megawatts of available power now to deliver a contract? And he came out and said, you're absolutely right, Anthony. We could move the Bitcoin mining to other facilities and use that site there for co-location deals as well as the Barber Lake site, giving them a total of 600 megawatts immediately.
Good point, and very exciting as a potential catalyst. Now, another point of connectivity between these three, the political aspect. So we've seen Eric Trump, he's obviously involved with ABTC. He gave me a nice retweet today, so shout out for that, and obviously some attention on the ABTC Hut 8 story. But our good friend Ben Gagnon, he's been busy with the political realm as well. You can see meeting with many of the top leaders in the Pennsylvania area. Again, looking across that portfolio, Panther Creek, Scrubgrass, Sharon, just like Kamasutra mentioned, all in Pennsylvania, all stand to benefit from this potential new FERC directive. And as you can see, Anthony, check marks across the board in terms of HPC AI requirements.
Yeah, and they're located in literally the right locations, covering the east and the west pipelines for lines going through to Europe and going through to Asia on the other side there. So we've talked a lot about Pennsylvania. Washington's another there. It's slightly more smaller there. It's an 18 megawatt site there, but it's located in the largest data center cluster on the West Coast. And with low cost of energy, that means the margins there will be very good. They've also got 170 megawatts of energy pipeline in Quebec as well. We haven't really spoke a lot about Quebec there, but again, cost-efficient renewable energy and a robust fiber infrastructure is all the right qualities you need to deliver this there. So, heading towards 1.2 gigawatts of power aligned to HPC. This is going to be an interesting next 6 to 12 months as we start seeing the uncovering of some of these companies announcing more deals. I mean, we were pleasantly, happy when the likes of Cipher and TeraWulf announced their deals, because at the time then it was really a Core Scientific's only deal, and they just seemed to be getting that deal bigger and bigger. Remember, it started at 200 megawatts, and then they had something like 4 or 5 increases to that contract, totaling now 590 megawatts. It's nice to see a few other miners coming to the table with deals as well, and I'm sure in the next 6 to 12 months we'll see a lot more miners with deals coming to the table to showcase what they can do.
We certainly will. So there you have it, folks. A very exciting week in the space, some ups, some downs, a great finish in terms of share price here on Friday, and yet again, more macro catalysts that are just fueling this industry. So one great way to stay up to date, our newsletter that comes out Friday. We just put out an article today. Again, a lot of great insights, data, details that maybe we don't address on the podcast. Feel free to sign up, 100% free to do. In addition, please hit the like button, guys. Helps get this content to other people like you who may find value. Feel free to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you back here on Monday.